In this lesson, we'll begin to clean up our scene, kind of set up our hierarchy, and finish out the model so that we can start to work with some materials and textures. So this is kind of where we left off. You can see our model here, then you can see our outliner that we've got open. You can go to Window, Outliner to open that up. So we want to kind of clean up this hierarchy. Right now we've got a lot of just objects hanging out in here with no name, no hierarchy or anything like that. So the first thing I'll do is select everything, and let's just go Delete by Type, History. Now we can get rid of any of these curves up here, as well as this NURBS surface that we have hidden that was for this tube. So let's go ahead and delete that. All right. We can also get rid of the image planes, and we can get rid of that initial body blank that we created. Now we can start to name things. So this can be the screen, and we'll just kind of work our way down. This, you can see, it looks like a group. This is what happens when we have a polygon object and we start to duplicate and extract polygons from it. It becomes this sort of group with a bunch of polygons underneath. So let's kind of clean this up a little bit. You can see inside here there's even another group. And so here is our body base right here. And so let's just kind of drop this out, Shift P to drop that out of the hierarchy. We can delete that empty group. Now you can see there's just a few things left over. We've got our thrusters. And again, we'll just drop these out of the hierarchy. And then we've got a couple of other pieces here. If we look at these, you can see that these are actually leftovers from something that we did before. So these polygons here. So let's go ahead and just delete those. All right, now let's take a look at this body itself. If we go to Isolate Select and go to View Selected, we can see there's actually a little bit of an issue right in here. So let's fix that. I'm going to hit 1 on my keyboard. And then we can come in and we can start to either just kind of delete these. So I can kind of delete those. You can see it kind of leaves behind a point. So I'll Control delete them. And then we can kind of select these. Okay, and let's call this something like mech body. Turn our Isolate Select back off. Let's now take the mech body. Let's center our pivot. I'm also going to turn off two-sided lighting just to check for any reverse normals. So anything that's black, we want to actually reverse. This is okay. So let's take this mech body, Control click the screen, which we've already named, and let's hit Control G to group that together. And then we'll call this just something like mech. So this is going to be our group where we're going to drop everything into it. All right, so let's kind of come down here. So here is a seal for, let's smooth this out. It's a seal for the tubes. So the tubes we can find here and here in these two groups. So let's create one group out of these. So I'll select all these and just drag them into this group 5. Now any group that's empty is not going to have this plus sign, so we can go ahead and delete that. Let's name this group Tubes. And then let's also get our objects here. And you can see that we need to pull this into the tubes group. And it looks like we might be missing one tube right there. So we can grab that tube, group it, duplicate it, pop it over to the other side, and freeze our transforms. All right, let's also clean this up so the normals are correct. If it's a polygon object, we can just go to Normals, Reverse. If it's a NURBS object, we can go to Surfaces, Edit NURBS, Reverse Surface Direction. These little seals are NURBS objects, so we can do the same thing down here. I'm just hitting G to repeat the last thing that I did. Now, sometimes it's important Let's grab this group. Sometimes it's important to have very specific names for things, and sometimes you just want to have something that's unique. It doesn't have to mean a whole lot to you. So in this case, on these tubes, let's say we just want to name this something besides a basic NURBS tube. So let's open up this section, last section here. And I'm going to go to rename. I'm up at the top of the interface here now. And let's just go tubes underscore and hit enter. And that'll name all of that and just add a number to the end. So now let's grab the tubes on a middle mouse, drag it into the mech group. All right, for the thrusters, we got both of these. We can select them, Control G to group them together, and we'll just call this thrusters. Drag this into the mech. We'll select this one and go to polygons, normals, reverse. Okay, and all these things we'll also center the pivot on as well. And for this guy, let's reverse the normals. And we can just call this something like shield, drop it under the mech hierarchy. Now the shoulder, we need to duplicate. So again, group it, duplicate it, send it over to the other side and freeze our transformations. And then we'll grab both of these and group them together. We'll call these shoulders. And then if you want to name them manually, since there's only two, you can call it shoulders A and shoulders B. And then grab that group, middle mouse drag it into the mech, delete those extra groups. All right, so we're just kind of working our way through. Now, as far as the arm goes, we can do one arm and then duplicate it over. So we can call this arm left shoulder, work our way down, call this arm left upper, arm left elbow, and then we have a group already here. We can call this arm left lower, and then we can take all of these and group those together. Okay, and let's actually move the pivot for this group. So let's come to the front view, and we'll actually maximize that. Let's move the pivot up kind of in the center of that shoulder. And we'll do the same thing kind of from the side. Kind of right here. Insert again, and we can kind of move it around. That way, we can move the whole group. So we'll call this arm left. And then the lower, you can come in and start to name all of that. Okay? And just name it something that's meaningful, maybe arm left, lower wrist. You could name, I'd leave the claws kind of alone probably, but you can name these other polygons. But let's take this arm, once we have it named, and group it again, make a temporary group, Control D to duplicate. We'll scale it across and freeze our transformations. All right, now we've got this arm left here. And so what we can do to make this arm right is go to modify and let's search and replace names. And we're going to search for underscore left, and we're going to replace it with underscore right. We'll just say selected on this one. We can do an entire hierarchy, and you can see now this is our arm right. And then we can drag this out and then drag our left arm. And then we just do the same thing with the legs. Okay? So just kind of go through naming your different objects. You just want them to have unique names. If you want to look at the specific names that I called everything, you can open up the final project file. I'll make an end file for this, so 34 end. And you can take a look at how I've named things. Your naming doesn't have to be exact. Now, when you go through the rigging portion, you'll maybe have to translate the names that Delano's working with versus the names that you've called some of your objects. But you should visually be able to see what those objects are. All right, so Once we've finished this up, I'm just going to copy the leg over. The next thing we'll do is talk about our materials and texturing section, which we'll get into next. So we'll talk about that in the next lesson.